So, the translations are out for My Hero Academia Manga Chapter 374, and oh my gosh, this is a big chapter because there's a massive reveal in this chapter and some implications from a character that can really shift and change the perspective of the story, as well as create a new climactic ending for what's going to be going on. Yes, that is a pun. You'll understand why, but first, right after this. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy Manga Man Drew, and I'm here to do my manga review for My Hero Academia Manga Chapter 374 titled Butterfly Effect. Do you see where the pun at the beginning of this video came from? If you don't, I'll explain it to you very shortly. But when it comes to this chapter of My Hero Academia, there is a lot that we really need to talk about. We have a character being revived, certain characters being shifted into different places, as well as a perspective change to the US to see what is going on in the world of My Hero Academia. And to start off this review, let's talk about the butterfly effect and what that actually means and what it means for the story as it is right now. And to people who don't know what the butterfly effect is, simply put, it is the idea or the concept that a small change in an environment or in a situation or really anything can lead to something larger occurring down the line. And a very good example that is used as when it comes to how this effect really came into play is when it comes to the weather, and it's addressed in the story what butterfly effect is being referred to. Because typically the idea of the butterfly effect is that a butterfly in some type of other country, let's say Brazil, flaps their wings and creates a tornado or a hurricane that hits or is in Texas. That's kind of what we got in this chapter when it comes to the idea of the butterfly effect, because we actually are in the US at this moment. Because you have this meteorologist pretty much saying that, there was a big shift in the climate in Japan, more or less, that is the result of just a whole bunch of heat being released that created these clouds that can affect the weather here in the US. And how when it comes to this ability, most likely than not, this is something that is due to a butterfly effect of the luminescent baby, and that this is going to potentially cause chaos in the world, and that potentially one person can be doing all of this damage and change the entire world. So you pretty much have this individual saying this, and may I say, she's very attractive, 10 out of 10, would love to see her again. But she's saying this and is referencing the idea that when it comes to the butterfly effect, that a singular change or a singular person can really shift and dramatically change the entire world and environment, as she's referencing All for One. And this is very important because we once again get reiterated that the entire world is trying to bend to the whims of All for One and try to be in his good graces when eventually they assume he takes over. However, the two countries that are always going against All for One is Japan and America. And how she says that she doesn't care and that she's going to speak her mind as the broadcast in America gets cut. But this is just really just showing how much the ideals of superheroes are rooted in both Japan and in the US via these two states or these two countries being the ones that are always going to be at arm's length and try to go against All for One, because they are representations of what it means to be a true hero, and that these true heroic ideals are always going to be in opposition of All for One. So if anything, it's just great world building in the world of My Hero Academia and really focusing on the US and why it is important for them to be a part of the story, because not only did they have the #1 hero of Star and Stripe give up her life, not only did they have the individuals still support Japan as well as fighting against All for One, but showing that there are still people in the US that are still willing to fight against All for One and speak their minds no matter what the government or what other people or the entire world is telling them not to do. So it's cool that we're getting a little bit more of that, but speaking of things that you probably shouldn't have done, let's look back on what happened with Kurogiri and how he has literally changed the entire dynamic of the war. Because it seems as if Kurogiri has been reawakened, and we learn later on that All for One sort of kind of planned for something like this could happen, that whether or not Kurogiri was fully awakened or not, that he had a microchip inside of Shimura's hand that would give Kurogiri orders And those orders are more or less to literally throw everything into chaos. Because we cut over to 3 different areas where we see that Kurogiri has drastically changed or will drastically change the dynamic and the flow of the fights there. We see that in the fight between Shoto and Dabi, as Dabi is beginning to crumble apart and he realizes that he cannot spend more time on Shoto and kill Shoto, and he plans to go off and fight Endeavor, a portal opens up and sucks in Dabi and takes him to a different area. And same can be said about what happened with Present Mic, where he, as well as Kurogiri, is brought to the area where Aizawa is, as you had the individual of Monoma thinking to himself and saying out loud that he's about to be the one to change history and that he wants to make sure that everything goes right, as we see that Deku is still fighting against Shigaraki. And finally, the final area that we see is the area where All For One is, as he's monologuing and saying that, oh yeah, it doesn't really matter what was going on. I always put my trust in the feelings of people, and it seems as if Spinner did his job right, as we get a third portal of another individual coming through and is going to drastically change the entire war moving forward. And that individual, from what we see, is Twice. Yes. Twice is quote-unquote alive. He is back. Most likely he is a clone of the original Twice, created by Toga, implying that Toga did intake Bubagawara's blood, or that this individual right here is actually Toga. It is very unclear on whether or not the individual that is right in front of them or right next to them is actually Twice, because Toga can mimic the voice of the people that she transforms into. But I would like to assume that this individual is actually Toga dressed up as Twice, because that just makes more logical sense than this actually being Twice. But that doesn't rule out the fact that this could potentially be Twice and Toga. But yeah, from what we get in this chapter, yeah, Shiro Kumo not being the one to be in control is really going to change the dynamic and ebb and flow. Because now Dabi has met his father and a confrontation is going to break out between them, potentially leading to Dabi and potentially Endeavor's death. Because Dabi is just at a point where his will is so strong that he's able to push through the pain, as his body is literally burning up to the point where you can see his bone. And literally everyone is questioning, how the heck is he still able to move like this? And even cutting over to what's happening with Aizawa, what is going to be going on with the fact that Present Mic is going to be right next to Aizawa in this moment? And why didn't Kurogiri actually warp over to where Shigaraki was inside of the dome? Well, from what I see with that, most likely than not, when it comes to Kurogiri, he can only pinpoint specific locations and connections that he has to people. The Tomura Shigaraki that is inside of the barrier is not the same Tomura Shigaraki, nor is it the same All For One, because it is a new individual. So Kurogiri would not have been able to warp to that location, but was able to warp to Aizawa because of Aizawa's connection with Kurogiri via Shirokuma. And the same can be said for how characters such as Twice, potentially Toga, Dabi potentially as well, were able to be warped over to where All For One is, because Kurogiri has a connection with All For One, Toga, and Dabi. So yeah, this fight is going to get even more insane. And I think that there's going to be a few things that we have. For instance, we have to see Hawks go up against Twice, as well as we have to see Twice or Toga dressed up as Twice performing the Sad Man's Parade. Because it is said in this chapter by All For One himself about how, let's see what would have happened if you actually didn't kill Gin in that moment, as we ended the chapter off with Hawk saying that they have to kill Twice. So I think that we're going to get a whole bunch of Sad Man's Parade and really get to see the true terror that is Twice in this chapter or within the next chapter, as well as we need to see how the heck Twice was even able to be in this chapter. So I think that within the next chapter, we're actually going to do another cut back to what's going on that island with Toga and Uraraka. See how Toga ingests the blood, what happens with there, whether or not she actually transforms into Twice, which is most likely the case. And at the moment that she transforms into Twice, that's when she potentially could be warped over to this battlefield, where then her dressed up as Twice would then be able to go up against all of the heroes here. But I do think potentially what's going to happen here is that not only will Dabi be brought over to this location along with Twice, but Uraraka as well as Shoto and potentially Ida will also be warped over to those locations because they will also go through the portal. Because it's not just a one-way portal, it's that if anyone can get through that portal, they will all end up in the same location, and there isn't really any kind of restrictions that restricts certain people from actually entering the portal. So I think that this is going to drastically shift where and how these fights are going to go, and it's going to be a little bit more unpredictable. All that in mind, this was a very good chapter for My Hero Academia because it resolves something that was set up many chapters ago and is potentially going to have even more resolved within the next few chapters. We get the return of a major character that we potentially knew was going to come back into the story. And we also get to see a little bit more world building, a little bit more perspective of the US and how they view All for One, and really showing more of a connection to the US when it comes to heroism to Japan and the heroism and the heroes fighting against All for One, and showing that Japan and America pretty much go hand in hand as being the key crucial points for where the ideals and the motives and the drives of heroism and what it means to be a hero really derives from, and how these characters embody those ideals. Yeah, that's all I really have to say for this chapter and this review. So let me ask you, what did you think of the chapter? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? And did you have a good Thanksgiving? Leave your thoughts down in the comments down below, leave a like on the video if you liked it, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content like this. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!